All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. We just picked up this used RZR 200 for the kids to ride. My daughter Rylan, she's 13. She does have a RZR 170, so keep an eye on the channel because we're going to do a comparison. The RZR 170 is going to go to some friends. Be a great unit for them. But we picked this machine up. It's got a little over 300 miles on it. It is a 2022, and I fully service everything before the kids ride it because we don't want to hurt anything. So this is just going to be a maintenance video for you guys. So if you're doing your first service, or if you picked a used one up like I just did, these are some of the things that I really want you guys to do. This machine did not come with a manual. I don't know where it went, but Polaris on their website, it's easy, Polaris.com. Go to the service stuff. I actually printed off 7 or 8 of the important pages that I thought we needed to do a good job presenting this video. So there's a few things right off the bat, and we'll give you the list, and then there's going to be chapters in this video. So if you guys want to fast forward to something specific, feel free to do that. You don't have to watch all of it, but I want it to be like what I do for my kids was what I want you to do for your kids. So first thing, of course, is oil change. So that's going to be the biggest thing. We're going to do the engine oil. We're going to check the brake fluid. We're going to do the transmission oil. We're going to check the drive chain. I do know the drive chain is sloppy on this. That's never been checked. Very loose. We will tighten that up. We want to grease this whole thing. The air filter, we're going to get to that as well. We're going to show you guys where the battery is. We're going to show you how to reset the display. So the displays, it's really cool on these Polaris models. It'll give you a countdown for when you need to do that service. So in here, we'll show you how to reset that at the end of the video. Tire pressure, that's so important. And whether you're racing dirt bikes or you're just trail riding, you got to get the right tire pressure in there. So we'll tell you guys how to do that. So on the table here, if you want to come over here real quick, we'll show you some of the stuff. So this is our transmission oil. We were a Polaris dealer for 25 years. We are no longer a Polaris dealer, but this is what we always used in the dealership, was just a 2.5 gallons with the pumps. So this is the transmission fluid that we will use. Conveniently, I have it on this. You can pretty much just get yourself a quart if you want to. You don't need a full 2.5 gallon jug of it. We do have 2 quarts of oil in the filter. This is the grease gun we're going to use. This is for the tire pressure. And then these are just some random sockets that I've already pulled out. Obviously, you're probably going to need a little bit more than that. And then the transmission, I was reading, has a really bad spot where they've located the drain. Not very excited about that. So this is a really cheap way. It's like $19, so we have them in the shop. A great way to drain that. And then a pretty cool tool that everybody kind of should consider having when they have a machine is to get those rivets out. It's spaced. We'll show you how to use this in a second. So first thing we'll do is the oil change. Let's jump into it. So before we get to the oil change, the first thing I really like to do is when I grab something used, just to go over it, and Braxton's excited. I like to go over the whole vehicle. So when I looked at it, you could kind of tell the A-arms are in pretty good shape. We haven't cleaned it since it came in. Machine's obviously been in some mud, but the customer did a pretty good job of taking care of cleaning this machine up. So we looked it over pretty good. I'm sure that there's some dents and dings and some things that aren't perfect on it, but that's okay. But I really just want you to look at, when you're looking at a used machine, like if the rims are really dented, that means that they were in a ton of rocks with low tire pressure. The A-arms, if they are bent, you want to make sure it runs okay. This one ran pretty good whenever we started it. What's cool with this 200 is that it is now fuel injected, where Rylan's 170 that she currently has is carbureted, so it's much harder to start. And then it's kind of looking overall the whole thing, you can kind of tell it was kept pretty well and pretty clean. This customer did add, so just some accessories to note. He added the mirrors, the front window, the roof, the rear window, front rear bumpers, and then it's got some light bars. And then it does have, tilt your head down, Braxy. It's got a stereo unit in it, so it's kind of cool. The guy added a couple features. The girls will like that as they're cruising around in the woods. But yeah, the first thing that we did notice is this plastic is not perfectly lined up on this door. Can't really tell from what, if it's back got pushed forward. I don't think that the front got pushed back because the door still shuts okay. So this is obviously a little bit either deformed or something happened there, but other than that, the machine's in pretty good shape. So the first thing when you guys are grabbing a used vehicle is to really look it over good and make sure you're getting a good buy. So with that being said, let's jump into the oil change. So to do the oil change, there's 3 main components that we got to look out for. We got the dipstick in the top. This is where we're going to check the oil, but it's also where we're going to refill it. We got our drain plug, which is directly on the bottom here. And then we have our oil filter. And Braxton's already slid the oil pan underneath of there for me. And please make sure you have a good way to dispose of the oil. We do, of course, with the shop, we have drums that they come and suck out. So The first thing that I noticed that isn't super exciting is how low the oil is on this dipstick. So if you look at it, it's barely on the bottom there, like not that far up on it. So that's not a great sign. So we didn't really let the kids ride it yet. We want to get, I mean, the oil's clean, but it's just low. So we need to get this out of it. Typically, Polaris wants you to run this machine for like 30 seconds before you do the oil drain, but I don't really even want to run it. We just want to drain it. So we're going to drain this oil out. So if you did run the engine for 30 seconds, be aware that it does get hot. Your exhaust is going to be hot. But yeah, so we're gonna pull the drain plug first. It's a 17 millimeter. It's right here on the bottom. Braxton's got the wrench there. I brought an extension over. I don't think I want the extension on here. I think I can get in there just fine. So Ryan, I'm gonna switch sides with you if you just want to slide over just a little bit. And on this drain plug, there is also a pre-screen. And so if I can get in here, make sure I'm going the right way here. Yep. I'm kind of doing it by feel, but if you were to get on the ground, you could like lay down and have a good look at this. There we go, I can feel it. I can feel that screen is fighting us up in there. There's like that pre-screen. So make sure you have a pretty good sized drain pan. And I probably should have had some gloves on, but I didn't. So they said there's a pre-screen in here, and so far all I've seen is just the spring come out of here. So there's our spring, and now that my hand's already soaked in oil. Oh yeah, I can feel the screen. Okay, there it goes. So let me pull that screen out of there. I'll give you guys a rundown of what this looks like. So pre-screen actually looks pretty clean. There's really nothing on it. And we'll clean this and we'll get it right back up in there. But you can see the oil is draining. It's pretty much already drained at this point. We'll let it drain for another second here before we touch the oil filter. So now that oil is pretty much drained, I'm going to turn the drain pan a little bit to get this oil filter off of here. And you never want to use pliers to put the oil filter on. You always just want to do it by hand. But you can definitely use them to get them off. So let's spin this sucker off of here. Try to get the pliers a good spot to turn this. All right, starting to loosen up pretty good now, but that oil filter was on there way too tight, so it's probably going to bleed a little bit. I'm going to grab a glove real quick. We're going to grab the filter and then we're just going to let it fall right off into the pan because we don't really, not trying to save this one. So the old filter is off and we will clean. We'll let it drain for just a couple seconds there. But then I always like to take a paper towel and you want to go start in the middle and then kind of pull out with the paper towel so it pulls the dirt away. You don't want to start and push in on it. You want to start in the middle and then pull outward. That way if there's any dirt on that lip, we get rid of it without hurting the machine. So that's pretty clean under there. There wasn't much dirt on the top of that filter. So we've got the new OEM Polaris filter, and we're going to put in the description exactly what we're using down below. So if you guys want to grab any of this or the tools that we're using, there'll be links or descriptions for each part on there. So it's an actual OEM filter, and you always want to put a little bit of oil on the O-ring when you put it back on. And then we're just going to screw it on hand tight. That's really slippery right now because I put quite a bit of oil in that O-ring, so just kind of got to play with it for a second. And that's nice and hand tight. So I'll clean all of this with starting fluid when we're done. That way there's no oil residue on the outside of all of this. And then that way we can always check for leaks as well, because right now you can see it's kind of shiny. And if we started it, we'd be like, oh man, is that new oil or is that from when we installed it? So starting fluid is a great idea. It always dries really clean. So now we got the new oil filter spun on, we're going to reinstall our drain plug on the bottom. So we just went ahead and we cleaned our drain plug up really well. And I always recommend cleaning the bottom of the engine as well, because if any dirt creeps up, you can kind of see how dirt was sitting on the outside of this. That dirt's also like right in the edge of the case as well. So I just laid under there and I cleaned all of the oil up and all of the debris away, and I got this all cleaned out. So this is really clean, ready to go back up in. And at this step, we're gonna start to snug it, but then we're gonna use a torque wrench, and this is what's gonna give us that exact number, because we don't wanna over torque this into the engine. It could strip this out. So every model and every year might be different, so I don't really wanna say the number, but on a 2022, it is 10 foot-pounds. So please make sure for whatever model year you have, you check that out. So we're ready to put this up underneath there. So now that we got the drain plug torqued, we're going to refill the oil. I always do that right away. I don't like to wait. And I've got a couple different funnels, but we're going to try this longer one. My shorter ones are cool, but the airbox housing hits it. So oil quantity, this machine calls for 1,050 milliliters of oil. But we're going to start with exactly 1 quart, which is 950. Because we always want to take it outside and start it and run it for a minute. We don't want to overfill it. So if I went straight to the 1050, there's the possibility that I overfilled the engine. I don't think we're going to hurt it at all if I run it with 100 milliliters or less, and then we'll continue to add oil as needed. So we will fill this and then we will double check it. So I don't want to actually run the engine yet and get it hot because we have other stuff we want to do in here. So if I just pull this out and look at it, you can see we're 3/4 of the way up the dipstick, which is perfect. Obviously, once we run it, we will fill that oil filter up. So when we're done, we'll take it outside, we'll run it for 30 seconds, we'll let it cool down, and we'll double check it. But at least there's plenty of oil in it for now. The next thing we're gonna do is the transmission oil. Okay guys, so we've been practicing with our drain here because they put the transmission above everything else. And so we are trying to get, I'm gonna pull it back out now, just so we're ready to do it. This is our drain bolt right here. It is a 14 millimeter. So we're gonna put this on here. I'm gonna crack it loose first. Probably should loosen it instead of tighten it. No, I was. Okay, we were going the right way. Okay, so now it's loose. And I'm gonna slide this back up in here. I know that there's some folks online making more expensive things, but this is 19 bucks and it works really good. So just want to get it into position, and I'm going to try to unscrew this. So while this is draining, we're going to go over and get the fill plug undone, but I just wanted to show you guys this. So in the directions for this bike, it just shows like a magnetic drain bolt coming out, but I got like a spring loaded drain bolt, so it's just a round sphere. So it just depends on your model year, I guess, what you're going to get out of there. So I was kind of surprised by that. I double checked the directions to make sure I drained the right bolt, and I definitely did. So this is just what we got out of ours. So I guess if you get this, don't be shocked. So we're going to go get the bolt ready to refill while this finishes draining. Okay guys, while that finishes draining, we're going to get our fill plug on the transmission ready to go. It's right here on the side underneath the airbox here. But this guard is kind of in the way, and it's definitely in the way for us to adjust the chain. So we need a 10 mil and a 4 mil hex head to get this guard off. There's 2 bolts here, they're the black bolts, but there is a nut on the back side, so we got to hold it still while we spin it off here. So we'll get this guard off, then we'll come right back. So let's get that guard out of the way, and now we can definitely see our drain plug right there, our fill plug. It's a 17 millimeter. So let's see if we can get this in here. Let's crack this loose. Now that the oil is completely drained out of the bottom, we can go reinstall our drain plug. We're going to pull this out now. Actually did a really good job. It caught 99.99% of it. At the very end, it's starting to drip on the side of the frame there just a little bit, but I think for 19 bucks we did a good job. So now we're going to reinstall that drain plug, and keep in mind it's got this little cool little ball bearing in there. kind of cool I got that first try because I was pretty nervous. I can't really see. So we'll screw this in, and this is going to get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. And again, please keep track of your year and your model to make sure you do it properly. So we'll grab our socket and go to 18. Try to find this a good spot to put this big long thing in here. And we cleaned all that too, just so you guys know. We cleaned the surfaces, we cleaned the bolt up. So I'm going to clean the rest of that oil off of here, just so we don't have an issue. And again, I'm going to use starting fluid here at the end, just to make sure there's no residue anywhere, so I don't freak out later thinking there's something wrong with it. So now that that's in, we can refill the gearbox here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay one of these absorbent rags down here, and that's going to catch this. So what they call this is like fill to spill, which you can either count 750 milliliters out and put it in, or you put it in until it starts to come out the threads of the bolt here. So basically at the bottom of this thread is 750 milliliters. So if it starts to come back out, that means we've hit our target. So I'm going to stick that in there, and here at the shop, like I said, we just kind of pump this in. We don't have, like, I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to go until it comes out. So we're using the fill to spill method here. Okay, you can see how it's starting to come back out those threads right there. And I'm going to grab our drain plug, or our fill plug. So right there you can see we've got our target. It's starting to run back out. So I'm going to put this back in. And this fill plug gets the same torque setting as the drain plug. They're both 18 foot-pounds. So my torque wrench is already set up, and I'll throw that on there right now and we'll get it torqued up. So we just took this guard off in the previous step. It kind of hung out in here like this, and it kind of blocked us from seeing the chain, but you can just tell by looking at it. This is supposed to have 10 to 15 millimeters of play, and it's got like 1 to 2 inches, so it's got way too much play. And you can see it's kind of, the whole transmission's hanging by this bar here. At the top of it we have a couple jam nuts, and then if we come to the top of the vehicle, if you want to come up here, if you look down here, there's this plug right in the middle, and if we get this plug out of the way here, I don't want to hurt the plug, so we're trying to pop it out nicely. If you look, maybe I don't know if you can get the gimbal to push straight down in that hole, but that's, we're gonna crack that jam nut loose. So I don't know what size that is, probably like a 17 or an 18. We're gonna loosen that, and then we're gonna crack these jam nuts loose at the bottom, and then we're gonna suck the whole transmission assembly up. We're going to suck this all up with this nut on top. So let me get the right tools first. So the first thing I'm going to do is crack this jam nut loose on top. You probably can't see it from down there, but it was super tight, so I got a breaker bar actually. So backing that off a little bit. So we really don't want to back this off because that's going to drop this down. We now need to make that tighter, but we got to get these, oh, they're already loose. So I took all the pressure off the top, which is nice because I had no idea how I was going to reach up in here with a open end wrench. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back these jam nuts off so they go down. So let's just suck the threaded rod up through the bottom, because we want to raise this assembly to take this slack out of the chain. So we're going to back that off quite a bit. Set this back on here, and we'll try tightening it now. So let's see. Yeah, if you back up a little bit now, if we kind of focus on the chain, you'll be able to see. Let that adjust a little bit. Is it focusing on the chain there? I'm sure hopefully you can see what's happening, but that chain's getting way tighter right here. So I'll put a finger on it. You can see how it's raising my hand there. Okay, we're actually getting pretty tight, so let me back that off just a little bit. And we're gonna lube this chain up because this chain is way sloppy. Hey Braxton, wanna grab some chain lube? So there we go, that's actually, the 10 to 15 millimeters is what we're shooting for. I'm gonna say somewhere in there. I'm okay with that. That's way tighter than it was. So now the tricky part is gonna be to get these jam nuts retightened. I don't know why Polaris didn't leave a little more room to get up in here, because somehow we gotta tighten these jam nuts down. So I have an 18 mil open end wrench that I was planning on just kind of grabbing it and doing this with. So I'm gonna hold the top still. I'm just gonna tighten these up against it. There, I don't think that's gonna go anywhere. So I push it on the top and on the bottom. That's nice and tight. And when we go outside to start this, we will lube the chain. I don't wanna do it in here. So thanks for getting the chain lube, but we're gonna wait to do it in a minute. So that is how you adjust the chain on a Polaris RZR 200. Next thing we're gonna check is the air filter. It's behind this cover. It's got 2 clips, one on each side. So we'll push that over, release it, and take the cover off. Oh, she's dirty in there. So we'll clean this out quite a bit. Like, it's got a lot of powdery dirt, definitely a lot of dust. This has been ridden in. So let me pull this out. The whole air filter cover is only held on by some push pins, which I think is kind of silly, but it's just barely dangling there. So this air filter is super dirty. You can see it. Look at it pouring out of it. So this thing's gonna run way better when we clean this. So we are absolutely gonna order a new air filter. I do not have one here, but we're gonna clean this air filter so the kids can ride it tomorrow. I'm gonna use an air jazzer to get it cleaned out. But we will absolutely get an air filter on order, and we'll put the part number down in the description of what we're gonna order. We're just gonna order the actual OEM Polaris filter. So we're gonna go outside and blow this out real quick. We got our housing cleaned out. We went and blew our air filter out. Obviously we're not gonna live with this forever, but it's definitely gonna get the kids riding this weekend to actually clean pretty well. So we'll shove this back in. Make sure it's all the way in. You can kind of feel it when it bottoms out. And then you always wanna put this down because this is the water drain. It goes down and we'll let stuff back up in. So we'll kind of center this. There's actually like a nice little tab on the housing there. Kind of nose straight up and down. And so that's locked on, and that's how you check your air filter. Next thing I want to do is check the brakes and the brake fluid. So to get to the brake fluid, it's underneath the plastics under the hood. So to get in here, that's where my cool special pliers come into play. So if you come on in here a little bit, and you can kind of get centered on this, on the nut, and you pull the center out. So now that the center's out, usually the bottom of it comes out with it. We can pull the bottom out as well. So let's do this one here. And pull up on it. That's usually what happens is they come out together. So now I can kind of pull up on it, and we'll rock the hood out of the way. And then if you turn just a little bit there, the brake fluid reservoir has a higher and a lower limit. Super hard to tell because the phone can't fit down in there. But if I unscrew, I'm just going to unscrew it so you guys can physically see the level, hopefully. So we are way high. Hopefully you can see that fluid in there. So we're really good. We're not down at all. It's at the upper limit here. If yours was down lower, at the lower limit, you guys would want to add fluid. So this machine is calling for DOT4 in this one. Just read your cap. Whatever your machine says is what you want to put back in it. So that's the brake fluid, and we'll check the brakes next. So we'll check the back brakes first, and you can see at either wheel on the sides here, there's no caliper. The brakes are right in the middle. You can see the brake disc there. And if I tilt this up a little bit, you can see the pad up in there is good to go. So I'm going to put my finger on the brake pad. So the brake pad right there has got a ton of life left in it. So the back brakes are good. And we'll go pull a wheel off the front. We'll check the front brakes. So we're going to pull a wheel off to check the front brakes because you really can't get in there to see it. So we're just going to jack it up. I'm going to leave a little bit of weight on the wheel first. This is a 15 mil socket. We will not use this to put those back on. You don't ever want to use the air gun to put them on. So the next thing I'm going to do is jack that up just a little bit more here. Got all that suspension travel. So we'll pull the wheel off here. If you bring that camera in really close, right here on the top, the brake pads are really good. So we're solid. We got plenty of brake left. So by checking this side, I'm going to go ahead and assume, because the back is good, this side is good, I'm sure the other side is just fine. So we'll throw this wheel back on, and that's a brake check. So the next thing we're going to do is check the grease fittings, and there's only 4 on this. So this is the front A-arm, and we've left the jack under here. We just checked the front brakes. And from what I've read, leaving the front jacked up a little bit gives you more room to get your grease gun on this grease zerk down here. So I just cleaned it off. I don't like to put anything on there when it's dirty. So you're just going to try to pump dirt right up into your grease fitting. So hopefully it's not super straight. I wish they would have thought about that. Yeah, it's not going to take it. Let me try jacking up a little higher here. Okay, so all the way up where the wheels are completely off the ground, it's still giving this grease gun a little bit of trouble. So we're not going to do the fronts this way. We'll go back and we'll show you the backs. So we're going to do the back grease fittings now, and these are for the sway bar. So we're going to center our grease gun on there, nice and tight. And these don't need a lot, they're just a bushing. So actually you can already see I put 3 pumps in there and it's already way too much. So we'll go ahead and do the other side, and I always clean, again, like the front, I clean the fitting off before I put the fitting on there. So we're going to try the front again. We've got a smaller grease fitting. It just doesn't clip on. And this is just a sway bar bushing, so it's not super critical, but okay, it's probably not going to take it. So, gosh, that's just a really bad spot for them to put that. So, like the transmission drain plug, I'm kind of wondering sometimes. Maintenance wasn't thought about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt WD-40 on the outside of this sway bar up here, just so it's actually going to get some sort of lubrication. So if you put your camera down in that hole there, right here is where I'm going to squirt some WD-40 just so it can penetrate and actually have some lube in there. Next thing we're going to check is the tire pressure. And if you read the back of the vehicle here, it says the tire pressure, the front is 5 psi and the rear is also 5 psi. So if we come down here to this wheel, and we'll do all 4 wheels the same way, we just click our tool on there, and ours is pretty cool that it's digital, and it's at 4.6, right there, 5.1. So yeah, we're basically right at 5. We'll check all the tires. This one actually was pretty darn close, so we'll go ahead and do the other 3 right now. It's always recommended to check your CV boots, and so on the back of the vehicle, this is only a rear wheel drive vehicle, so it only has 1 set of axles in the rear going to each wheel. But if it was a 4-wheel drive vehicle, we'd be checking all 4. And the tall tale sign of a failed boot is these are packed full of grease, and you would see a ton of grease coming out. It'd start to make a mess on the outside of the boot. It would collect dust, and then it would also just like drip on your floor. So if you look at both sides here, these CV boots are good. And it's important not to let a CV boot go. So like if you see, and these fail quite often just because like sticks, I mean, they're pretty vulnerable. So if a stick pops this, what it'll do is it'll let all the grease out, but at the same time it's letting water and dirt inside, and then it'll ruin a whole half shaft. And if it ruins a shaft, I don't know the exact cost of these, but probably a couple $100, and then whatever you got to pay your dealer to replace it. So always recommend checking your CV boots, because a CV boot can be as little as like 10 to 15 bucks to replace, where like I said, a whole axle can be a couple $100. So CV boot check is always a good thing to do. One thing we're not going to service in this video is the spark plug, but you can kind of follow it down. So the coil is up here, you can see it, and then if you follow the spark plug wire down, our spark plug cap is right there. So we would just pull the cap off. It's actually really easy to get to. It's behind the right rear wheel, and you could get your wrench right in there and get that on that. So spark plug, very easy to get to. I'm not going to change it. I don't think that's like a huge service thing unless it's not starting right. So easy to get to, but not doing it now. Another thing that is so important to keep track of is the battery on these little machines, because they are a much smaller battery and the kids don't always ride. So if they go a month without riding, your battery can drain down, and then when they go to hop in the thing, we've had it happen plenty of times, it just won't start. That's not exciting. So what we did is I had Braxton hop in and he slid the seat all the way forward. So the seat is as far forward as it'll go. And you can kind of see the top of the battery right there. That rubber strap down in there is the top. So we could actually unbolt that seat. There's 2 bolts. If I get my fingers, there's a bolt there. And on the other side, and then you can see the strap there on the battery. You could unstrap that battery and then get that out. But A really cool and easy way to maintain these RZR 200 batteries is they got a built-in charger port. So if I pop this cap off of here, you can buy a Polaris accessory charger that'll plug into here. It's actually more of like a maintainer. So it'll never overcharge the battery, but it'll always keep it perfectly topped off. So that way you're not chasing the battery issue underneath the seat. You can keep it plugged in right on the dash. I think it's a really cool feature that Polaris included on the new machines. So last thing I want to do for you guys is reset the service hours. So let me turn the key on. You're going to hear the radio, so apologize for that. So it's going to do its normal thing. Okay, right here, the service wrench is blinking, meaning that this machine needed to be serviced. It was time. So it just I can kind of toggle through. So right here it says service 0. So that means in 0.0 hours this machine needs to be serviced. They probably serviced it because the engine oil wasn't super dirty, but they never reset this. So if we toggle through this screen here, it kind of shows you all the different features: odometer, miles per hour, RPM, engine, service. So this is the one that we need to reset. And how we get in here is we're going to hit mode. So now it's showing service. We're going to hold down on the mode button. Options. So now we're kind of in the machine's menu. I'm going to scroll down. So we're not going to exit service hour. Hey, check that out, second one. So we're going to reset this new. We want to go back here. I'm going to hold down on mode to enter in there. And we're going to set the service hours. Let's see. Let me get back in here. Options. Service. Here we go. So I had tapped instead of holding down. I don't want to service this again for probably like another 40 hours. I'll do it sooner. They say every 50, but I don't like to go that long with it. So I'm going to hit mode again. So now, and it's going to set the timer again. Let me exit the menu here. So there's a lot of things in here you guys can play with. So I would read your manual, exit, so enter. So if I turn the key off, wait, like you got to wait a little bit here. Turn it back on. Again, sorry for the radio. So in 40 hours, the service wrench is going to blink, but the wrench was not blinking when I turned it on. So we'll go back to the main menu for the kids here, so that way they can see their probably miles per hour. It's more exciting for them. So that wrench is now gone out of the display, and in 40 hours of runtime, it'll flick again. So that's really cool with Polaris having a wrench right in the display, so us parents aren't trying to rig up a secondary hour meter. It's all right in the display. So that's the display. All right, thank you guys so much for following along with the video. We hope you found it helpful. If you just got your little guy a RZR 200, hopefully they enjoy it as much as our kids are gonna. Of course, now the kids show back up because we're done for the day. We just finished everything. The last thing we're going to do is push us outside. We're going to double check the chain and the oil level because we didn't lube the chain yet. So we're going to go home and let these kids ride these things, and keep an eye on the channel. We do have a RZR 170 that we're going to do a side-by-side comparison before our friends take it home. So enjoy the ride.